Hi, my name's Senga Lindsay. I'm a landscape architect in North Vancouver, but today I'm here in the south of France, Provence to be exact, in one of those amazing potager, or what they call kitchen gardens, here in the south of France. And today I'm going to take you a little bit through what a potager garden is, the elements of, and in this case, this garden is a bit of a contemporary or modern derivative of an old-fashioned or an old way of kitchen garden style. So the first thing I want to point out to you is potager gardens contained everything from fruits, vegetables, herbs, and as you can see, they're very much laid out in a very formal geometry, pathways defining our different planting beds. And in this case, in this particular bed, we not only have our series of vegetables, there's our traditional French endive there, but we also have these espaliered trees. These are apple trees. Espalier is a technique of keeping, you can see the size of this trunk of this tree. These are very old apple trees, and they're deliberately kept dwarf in order to create an orchard that's very small and manageable, so that when the cook comes out from the nearby kitchen there, all of the fruit and produce is easily accessible. So I'm going to take you through the rest of the garden and show you some little tips and techniques on creating your own potager garden. And I'm standing here in the herb portion of the garden. Very typical herbs that you'd find in not only North America for cooking, but grow like crazy here in France. We've got our rosemary, we've got our lavenders, we've got our mints, and of course the ever important French tarragon over there. And as you can see, we still have the formal pathways for accessibility, but as very typical for a French formal garden, we also have a series of edging treatments. In this case, this part of the garden has a boxwood hedge. And then just over to my left, where you can see just beyond the chives here, there's a row of parsley, and we have what they call a woven fence that's made of wood slats, and that's separating the different areas of the herbs. And here's another section of the garden just to show you how much the French really relish that exuberant formality and ornamentation. Here's another set of espaliers, which I think is quite fabulous. You see this rhythm of trellised, or they're almost like sculptures in themselves. These are the apple trees again that have been espaliered into this sort of candelabra type form, and it rhythmically works its way all the way down the pathway. And then in front, along the edge of the walkway, no space is wasted. You can see they've started growing some of the leaf lettuce, and of course we have the nice beautiful red to create some color in the garden, as well as looks fabulous in your salad. And then behind, unlike Vancouver, in France here, the dry, hot summer days are perfect for growing tomatoes. These are the indeterminate varieties, beautifully staked, no diseases on them, and some of the most fabulous tasting tomatoes you'll ever find. And what I found so far here in Provence, that the heirloom tomatoes are very, very popular here. They're much more tasteful, luscious, of course, because of the sunshine and the dry climate here. And here we are in another part of the garden. Just wanted to point out to you some dwarf varieties of fruit trees. Here is a quince, and you wouldn't believe the size of this fruit here. Growing rampantly, but again on dwarf rootstock, very manageable, very easy to harvest. Behind it, some wonderful yellow peppers, and for ornamentation and also edibles, we've got the artichoke, those big silver-leafed plants in the background. So as you can see, everything is very laid out in rows, colors paid attention to, neat and tidy, and a little technique they use here, which we thought was pretty clever, is the use of mulch. And because this particular garden is part of a vineyard, What they've done is they've taken the old husks or the skins of the grapes after they've harvested them, dried them out, and used them as mulch. Now that's a great way to recycle. And what garden in France would not be complete without the ever important lavender? Here it's being used to edge the edible beds. Plus, lavender is also an important component for the bee or honey production here. We see a ton of lavender honey, as well as it is used in cooking. And just a really interesting design thing I thought was fascinating was the use of rebar. And you can see they've used rebar in a very interesting way to create little fences, which I'll show in other examples throughout this garden. But very simple, using easily readable, easily made products into ornamentation. And then of course, I wish I could do this, but look at this Swiss chard, the size of it, just exploding with color, works beautifully with the silver of the lavender, as well as the fine texture off to the left of the globe artichoke. And what garden would not be complete without the ever-present little patio sitting area where you can dine al fresco and survey your gorgeous garden. And just off to my left, there's the panorama view with the little cottage in the background and all the fruits and veggies and herbs all laid out ready for picking. And then off to my right, you can see a very interesting little fence that's actually, again, an espaliered apple tree. Very tiny, creating a little frame around this patio area. And then very typical of formal gardens, we've got these various layers of boxwood hedging, creating texture, formality, and juxtaposing against those very cylindrical or conicular clipped yews. And one of the things that makes a French garden so magnificent is the attention to detail. Everything from whimsical pieces like the slug or the snail here, which as we all know is quite the challenge in many of our gardens, but in here is presented more like a little folly. We've got lots of pots on the patios behind me, and of course the ever-present pathways, if they're not in a brick like on the patio itself. We also have like the decomposed stone or granite pathways, which usually double not only as walkways but as great petanque courts. Here's another example of using plant as an art form, and here is another espaliered apple done in what they call the fan shape. So simple use of rebarb, wire, and post to train selective stems of the apple trees into this espaliered form. Two more unique ways of using rebarb that make it still look very traditional as a French garden. And this rebar here, as I previously shown, we had the weaved lattice boards. In this case, rebar has been used in a similar fashion here and welded together, making a perfect border for this lavender field. And then behind me, a nice simple lattice work to contain these rudbeckias. In a French garden, we have the ever important grape. This is a vineyard, as I explained, but we have in many of the gardens the table grapes, as well as growing for the regular winemaking. Again, kept small, simple, and in its own way espaliered. It would be much different in a regular vineyard, of course, but for the garden, it's meant mainly for ornamentation, as well as to get a bit of food from it as well. And then just to add a final bit of whimsy to our garden, off to our right, we've got a bit of a take on an espalier. You can see the apple in the far third post. These are actually columnar apples that have been fixed onto posts with the little ornamentation or the hats on top. So adding a little bit of whimsy, ornamentation, as well as some edible to the garden. And there you have it. I'm Senga Lindsay. I'm a landscape architect from North Vancouver. We're here in beautiful Provence in a gorgeous potager or kitchen garden, beautifully laid out. Hope you've learned something today. And if you'd like more information on kitchen gardens, garden design, please visit my website at www.sengadesigns.com. See you next time.